Welcome to the Moon Collective Sanctuary. I'm Dr. Lydia Luna, and I invite you to join me on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and transformation as we explore the depths of our inner and outer world to unlock our truest potential. Hi, welcome to the Moon Collective Sanctuary podcast. Today I have Mary Telliano, end-of-life and soul doula. So thank you so much for coming today and being with all of us. I'm so excited to hear about you, your journey, and what it is that you do. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It feels so welcoming to be in your space, and I'm just excited to share with you and to share with your audience.
Yes. So the reason that I'm so intrigued to get to know you, to speak with you today, is that I recently had a transition with a family member, and it's been difficult. And I understand, the transition, this person is still here, but it's difficult to lose somebody in the physical realm. But I feel like through this process, it's really opened me up to this otherness, which is end of life. And whether it's end of life doula or just ceremonies too that can be offered to families, bringing in the spiritual component to such a sacred time, especially for people that may not have a religious background or something to anchor them during this time. So I'm really excited to hear about all of this and learn more and have our listeners also learn more. So maybe we could just start by you introducing yourself. How did you learn about this yourself, and what is it for those that may not know?
Yeah, well, I think the road to it, remembering that you're an end-of-life doula, I think everybody, by the way, is an end-of-life doula. If you're alive, your body knows how to die. And so it's really just getting in touch with that place. And not a lot of people will walk that road. And typically it is through a death that you recognize your gifts. And it was through my grandfather's passing that I recognized, oh, wait, there's something here and this feels a little different. So I had been serving plant medicine and facilitating for about 4 years at that point. And when he was in transition, I found myself just doing the things I would for people in ceremony. And I was like, this is interesting because I'm not grieving. And this is odd. And I just sat with that, but didn't know how to articulate that feeling. And it was a week and a half later that I was sitting in the car with one of my medicine teachers, and he looked at me and said, "You ever heard of becoming a death doula?" And as soon as he said death and doula, like my cells came alive. It was like, oh, yes, this is what I've always wanted to do, and I don't know how to say it except those two words. And so I was doing finance and insurance in a motorcycle industry up until that point, and ceremonies on the side and my own healing on the side. And I put in my 3-month notice and was like, I'm out. I'm going to do this now. And I got certified and developed my practice. And then from my practice, started training other end-of-life doulas to do this work.
So what is this end-of-life doula process? I mean, the way I found you was to ask, somebody that I knew that knew about end-of-life doulas. There's also an organization called End Well. So I love them. They're all about promoting this end-of-life journey in a sacred way.
Yeah.
In terms of incorporating plant medicine through that journey. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work being done around this field, and there should be, because we're all going to pass eventually, right? Yeah. So I'm curious for you, what does all of this look like?
Psychedelics within itself, the practice, the use of it, I've recognized over the years, this is a death practice. Even if you're not facing diagnosis, you're like, oh, I need to change this. Death of a belief. I need to readjust that. Death of the way that you receive or give yourself, right? There's always a death tied into the plant medicine experience. And for those at the end of life who are looking to have that, it can be so empowering. It can be so empowering for somebody who is been poked and prodded and had a lot of their decisions taken from them, right, as they start to transition, and giving them this piece of themselves. And holding that kind of container changes everything sometimes with their contract with what they think is death. I don't believe death is real. I've seen it enough times to believe it is a transition. But when you're in it, it's a whole other ballgame. And so this piece of psychedelics, while I'm facilitating it, there is something else working with this person in their subconscious to support this transition. And I just create that container for it. But there are, I think, 1,000 bajillion death doulas doing different work. My focus is plant medicine and education. Other doulas might be estate planning and cooking. So it goes all over the spectrum. There's pretty much a death doula for every kind of family looking for some kind of support.
So when we think of doulas, we think of birth doulas, and a birth doula is there to support the mom through the birth and incorporate the plan that they want. So I'm hearing end of life doula is something similar. They just support the family or the individual in the way that they need, and that can range.
It's really kind of an intake with a family is different for each person. So it's really kind of engaging and seeing what is the need. And then assessing with yourself if this is something you can do to create. But it's different for each person, and each person is going to require something different. I've worked with somebody for 2 years before they transitioned, and I've worked with people who are non-verbal a day before they died. And so then I'm just supporting that space and that nonlinear space. And so to walk you through like a typical day with me would be when I'm off to see my clients, getting into that space. I get there, I unpack my sound bowls, we do breath work, we do sound, we do conversations, and just working with the energetics and the truth of what is going on and supporting that. And then as time goes on, maybe the sound healing goes away. Maybe that's too much as the body starts to weaken, sensitivities heighten. And then maybe it's just now doing Reiki and then doing Reiki with somebody and then going out and working with the family for an hour so that they can attune their nervous systems to then support this person. So it's just a lot of navigating these spaces and then holding vigil. What does this person want for their end of life? Do they want sounds of the ocean? Do they want certain smells in their room? Do they want to be wearing certain garments? Getting really specific, helping them design their death is really empowering for them too. And then the legacy project, the legacy project is like a fingerprint. It's a magnifier and like a hologram that lives on archive of somebody's life and the kind of footprint they left behind based on how other people receive them and how they wish to honor them. And so that can be when somebody's alive, and that can be long after somebody's transitioned.
All right, Mary, so you mentioned the legacy program. What is that?
So a legacy, if you think about grief and loss, and just in your own experience, even in your recent experience, what is something that you want to do with it? Create. You created a beautiful ceremony for your friends and your family, and it just like multiplied in its attraction to people wanting to participate. Death is creative. Grief is creative. And so these legacy projects are very unique. It could be a video, it could be a cookbook, it could be a diary, it could be I'm giving like just a few of so many that come through the work that you can do with one of your clients. And so it's just something where people can continue to look back on and be like, oh, that was grandma's cooking. I'm going to cook her cookies today. Yeah. And it's getting more technical too. So like if there's, and I don't know the name of this company, but there's these QR codes that you can place on gravestones and people can go by and take a picture and get the recipe that this person liked, or it's a video that pops up of them like dancing. So it's just another texture to bridge in the importance of that person and the landmark and the footprint that they left here. Everybody's here on purpose. And so this helps kind of create that unique frequency for people to tap back into.
I love this notion that everybody is here on purpose. I believe that too. And what better moment to really reflect on this than when you're going to transition, right? Because oftentimes we kind of live life aimlessly sometimes, but to have that moment to reflect on what was the purpose can be so powerful even at the end.
I think it's most powerful at the end because then you've got the full body of work.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What a optimistic way of looking at all of this.
I see it as personally And so, when you're with a client, there's a level of sensitivity and discernment. But in my own way of seeing death, it's a graduation from the body. It's a celebration of this person's soul moving into something so much bigger. And I can't wait to meet and be with all the people who have left before me when it's my time. And so there's a place of peace within my body and my awareness of when it's supposed to be. And I think we're supposed to kind of live that way.
Is there anybody that this wouldn't be a good thing to do? Is there anyone that you think like this would be counterintuitive?
No, no, because it's the one thing we all have to do. So, get close to your death regardless of how you get there. Some people will jump out of an airplane, and some people will go do 3 weeks of ayahuasca, and some will do a darkness retreat. There's something about initiation into the unknown that prepares us for the unmasking of being human. That's a practice. And so it's wonderful to learn how to let go. It's wonderful to love so deeply that you know it's going to end and still enjoy it. And that's the place that I think being close to death can get you.
This process has also brought to light preparing in terms of like how you just mentioned the finances, how we even want our services, do we want to be cremated? What do we want for our ashes? If we have an open casket or a closed casket, what do we wear? All of these things, right? So in your experience, when is the right time to start planning for all of this? Like you said, we never know
Today.
how or when. So
Yeah.
like how does one...
Today would be great. Today would be great if it feels comfortable. It's biting off a lot to just ask somebody to sit down and plan your death when you feel healthy. It can be really confronting. So I tell people, use it as an experience that it might be triggering. Take your time with it. But I think there's no better time to sit down, maybe work through an advanced directive. I have one called Final Chapters, which is getting really detailed about all of those specifics. And then on top of it, legacy and vigil questions, which I think is so important to just, why not have this book for your family in the event that you go through a situation where you can't speak and communicate it. And then it's like it's a spiritual practice too, to forward face your death.
So does the doula help that individual think through things that they may not have thought about?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible a doula might walk somebody through the advanced directive, or you could pop into a family and they've already done that. And most times they have. Most times they've gone through that process. They know exactly what they want. And so you're just there to enhance that and make sure that those things happen. But sometimes they don't know. And so then you would suggest, have you looked at an advanced directive? Have you gone through those questions? Yes, my doctor recommended me. No, I don't want to look at it. Okay, let's start there then. That's the place to start.
So that feels like the administrative part. Now let's get into the deeper part. So plant medicine during this time, my understanding from the little that I know is that it can be a very beautiful addition to this process. Oftentimes if people are really towards the end and there's a lot of pain, my understanding is that they incorporate like morphine or other drugs that are sedatives, right? That just kind of take people away in a sense so that they're not experiencing the pain. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if they add psilocybin, then the person becomes more awake, more lucid, and then they experience the journey differently. Can you share more about what you know?
So there's a huge intake process for somebody that there's a lot of reasons why somebody shouldn't do the medicine. If they're highly sedated and can't make the authoritative decision whether they want to do this or not, we won't be doing it. We're just going to be using the medicine of the morphine and the energy in the room, and that's going to be great. And so I just want to always, be mindful of what they can do, what they can't do. And so I do an intake process. I like to work with the family and the doctor if I can. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable sharing what they're going to be doing, and that's okay. I work with the pharmacist that I can cross-reference certain medications to make sure that they're eligible for whatever medicine we decide. There's a few. But say all those boxes are checked and we're good to go. What this can create is just enough space in their default mode network so that those protectors or those barriers can go down so that they can experience information that might be super helpful towards the end. And that's really what it is. I think of two stories I can share with you. I was out of the country and I was facilitating a retreat, and I looked down and I was actually with the sister who I was training to serve. I trained her to serve plant medicine. And so she had gone to serve this client with me. And months later, here we are in Mexico together again. And I was like, oh, he just died. I messaged his family. He just passed away. I was like, I knew it. Just, I was so close with his spirit. And he was just a jolly man from Tennessee. And he had a nut business, roasted nuts, peanut, just like in Forrest Gump with all the shrimp. He had like all the different kinds of nuts. And he was hilarious in his marketing. He goes into the medicine experience, and the medicine we were working with was 5-MeO DMT. And I'll work with very low doses at the end of life because sometimes a long journey is too taxing. So he took a little bit in. He goes, oh, this is better than morphine. And I was like, wow, okay. Coming from a man dying of liver cancer who's been poked and prodded, and this is like a very big statement to say. And so he was really on to something with that. And that was really inspiring to hear. So that was great. And then there was another woman I served, and her fear was that it would be painful to separate from her body. And so we have to remember these fears become a thought, and then it becomes a thought every couple of days, and then a thought every couple hours, and then it becomes the only thing you can think about.
And then the body constricts, I imagine.
And it listens. It listens. Like it listens to the command of, I'm not safe.
Right.
And I don't know, and I fear. And so this was the fear, and it became louder and louder. And so we did one round of 5-MeO, and in between the rounds, she'll come back and we'll integrate and we'll talk. And so we were right in between rounds, and she goes, she's in the ceremony, and she goes, oh, separate, whew, separate. And she's saying all these ways of the word separate. And so in the in-between, I said, can you tell me, you mentioned a lot of times in the ceremony, separate. Can you tell me a little bit about what that felt like for you? She's like, oh, it was beautiful. I was separate from my body, and I was floating through all of these clouds. And I go, huh, so it didn't hurt? And she goes, huh, no. And to watch the contract change with death and with self in such a big way, like she spent time with her family. She was able to engage because she had enough proof that maybe that wasn't true.
Wow, how beautiful. I want to hear more stories.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a father. Oh, I get there's a lot that happened in the ceremony. So I was working with this man, and a lot of the times the care team will end up being the ex-wife if there's kids involved, and if you haven't gone on to a new partner, like the ex will step in. And the ex was now remarried, and they were a beautiful family. They were very much involved in the plant medicine community and healing. And so they had vocabulary, and experience. And so I go over and I'm serving the father and his 3 boys, and the mom and the new dad we're all holding space, and it's beautiful. Like it's nothing like the what like we were talking about before. I was like, okay, he just had an experience. It was nice. He was a little stubborn. And so he just had the experience, and it was fine. And so then the new father that would be taking over this family wanted to have this experience. So we took him to the next room. So in between the room was a wall and a fireplace that separated the living room from the main bedroom. And so I go in there, and we're on the bed, and the client's still on his hospital bed in the living room. And we start to set up for his journey, and immediately it says, you need to go and sit with him. I don't want to use his name. Go sit with him, and you need to let your assistant do this. This can be done. You don't need to be here. Go there. I'm like, okay. I was like, you guys are good in here. I'm going to just now go in there because I'm being told to, and everyone gets it. They're like, okay, go be with him. So I go and I sit down and I hold his hand, and immediately my body becomes electric. And he's like, I'm showing you now, you need to know you're just a battery. When you're in this space, you become the battery. This is how you go to this place now when you're in medicine space, when you're facilitating death. You just become the enhancer of the energy. And I really understood and understood like that message. And then all of a sudden, pop, the fire between the rooms starts popping. And I know just to be still. And I don't know if you've ever been in plant medicine and had an experience when you know you just have to be still. Or maybe in meditation, you know, there's like this still place you get where like you want it. You're aware that you're not supposed to move. I don't know what that place is. So I went there and I'm just feeling into this experience. And they come back through and the father's done now with the ceremony. They all come back to, to the room. And he said he was seeing himself and the client passing off the baton through the fire. You're the father now. You take control of them now. You are now the steward of this family and the shepherd. And it was just powerful, like this magical moment. And I really feel like that fire popping was like them, the changing of the guards, so to speak.
How beautiful. So as you're talking about this, what's coming to mind is, policies around this kind of medicine. So I know a lot of states are working towards legalizing plant medicine, psilocybin for one. I know Oregon and some other state, Oregon for sure has legalized psilocybin for therapeutic use. So I'm curious, as you're talking about plant medicine, what are the legalities behind all of this?
Yeah. You put yourself in interesting positions, knowing what I know, but I'll just say for the platform, everything I've ever served is legal in legal states or countries. I'm excited to see where this goes with the revolution or the re-evolution of psychedelics, because we've reawakened something that was started back in the 70s. But I can just say we are no longer asking the government if it's okay to heal.
I love
they're
that.
not coming at our pace. And
Right.
we're at a time right now where we really just want to be told the truth. And it's not going to be found in a government policy. It's not going to be found even in your mother and father. It's going to be found within. And it's just time that we just are sacred rebels in that way, and just going forward and forging through these processes for people to legalize this. Everybody has their job in this process. And some people will say are like railroad people.
So there's an organization called MAPS that's working on legalizing MDMA, psilocybin, and LSD for therapeutic purposes. Specifically, some examples are for like treatment-resistant depression, anxiety, PTSD. They're working with vets right now. They're doing clinical studies. So there's a lot of promising research that shows that this works, that this is healing, and that it's shorter. It's like a shorter time frame before we see positive outcomes. They're consistent, and some are actually more beneficial than the typical prescriptions that people receive for this kind of diagnoses. So my understanding is that there was like this huge situation that recently happened where they went in to get approval for this medication, and they were rejected, and they're not giving up. They're still trying. So the hope is that at some point these things are legalized. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but a lot of the funding that was coming to object these positive outcomes were the pharmaceutical companies. That's my understanding, where there's a lot of push against it because there's a lot of money to be lost from legalizing this beautiful sacred medicine. So it's such an interesting world as we start looking into all of this, right? But I love what you're saying, that we are no longer looking to the government for permission. So we can be empowered. We can find our own healing path. We don't have to necessarily, if we don't feel called to, subscribe to what Western medicine has programmed us or conditioned us to believe, that only this kind of medicine will bring healing. There's so much otherness, right, from our ancestors, from the earth, that are accessible should we decide to take that route. Not that this one is bad.
Right.
Sometimes that is super necessary, but also there's more.
Yeah, there's a lot of money to be made, and they definitely are not working from the platform of, if you understand the person, then you understand the sickness. They understand the sickness, so they try to like push that the protocol down everybody's throat. Well, there's this huge missing piece of, why does this person have this in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think humans were made to have sickness like we have and depression like we have. And I think that if we continue on and we forge on through the psychedelic experience, in 100 years from now, our great, great, great grandkids will be like, that's so funny they had to do psychedelics to remember what we already are. We're going to come back to a place where we realize our tears are better than any pharmacy. To taste your tears, to let your body move when it's in a state of needing to process a large and big emotion, to lock away shame so that we have enough space in our nervous system to just offer ourselves love in the darkest places. And this is all medicine, and it's going to be that way if we continue this route. So it doesn't end with psychedelics. We're just going back to the beginning where we remember our natural state.
What a beautiful way to say this.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to dive into this soul doula. Is it different than end of life doula? Can you share more about that?
A lot more quantum.
I love quantum.
Yeah, it's quantum. It's Reiki. It's working in a space with people and their energy. In a form, it's like more informative than healing, if that makes any sense. The healing comes with the information. I think it's a byproduct of the information that comes through. But I continue to be enlightened from the other side, from the souls that go over. So maybe, there's a soul on the other side being like, I'm a human doula. Like,
right. I connect with them.
Yeah, it's like this little thing because I think we're helping each other. But yeah, I think the soul inherently knows what to do, but I do recognize that sometimes we need to say our loved ones' names. So before you expressed your experience with your recent loss, and I noticed that when people describe a loss, they describe what the person's title is: my grandma, my grandpa, my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, my brother. Yeah. And it's important for us to say their names because we have to anchor them still here. There's still work to do on that side like there is this side. And so it's just playing in these other realms of reality that I find to be, the space we go to in our dreams, maybe.
And share more about the educational piece to your work.
Yeah. So when I became an end-of-life doula, it was 4 days of incredible knowledge. I got a wealth of knowledge and I was so activated. And then the 4th day was over and I was like, what? So now I'm just like a doula? Now I just go do it? No, that can't be true. And I craved mentorship. I craved an initiation towards this. I craved that amount of time, but at that time it wasn't available. And so I just developed my practice and started doing it and then getting my own paid clients. And then I was at a women's retreat and it was words on a typewriter on a screen that says, you're supposed to create the thing that bothered you the most. And you know how when information comes through, it's just like a boop.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, I'm supposed to create a school that initiates. And the school just started pouring out of me. I'd wake up at 2 a.m, writing this down in the car, making notes. Like it just didn't end. I was possessed with this creation that wanted to come out of me so bad. And so I just allowed it. So it's a 3-month program, 90 days. It's, workable with modules, and then there's coaching, and then there's mentorship, in-person mentorship. And so I partner with a local hospice here called Golden Gate Hospice. And this is where my doulas can get hands-on experience of what it is like. And so once they see me do it, then they can take all of that and really work it into their practice. So that's what this school is. It's a remembering, and it's a mystery school because each doula comes out different. And I didn't sit down to make a mystery school. I think that would be really inauthentic to be like, I'm going to make a mystery school. Looking back now, years later, I recognize that it is a mystery school.
And when you say mystery school, what does that mean?
I don't know what you're going to get from it, but I know you're going to get something. And whatever that something is that brought somebody to the program will be like a magnifier of whatever that intention was. And so I look back and I'm like, oh, like it's like a garden. There's a rose there. There's a sunflower there. This one's doing, like I have doulas now that just work with kids. I have doulas now that just work with pets. I have doulas now that just work with people who are dying alone. So with NEDA, No One Dies Alone. Or NODA, excuse me, not NEDA. NEDA is an alliance for end-of-life doulas. So NODA, No One Dies Alone. So there's just everyone that comes through is different. So there's a mystery in there because it's not cut and paste.
So as you're speaking, I'm noticing this thing that happened with you, that you allowed the journey to evolve as you entered just a calling, or you responded to a calling. So what or how did you do that? Because sometimes we get understandings, some kind of interest where we're like, we want to do that, but life, our human self or fears get in the way. How were you able to go through that?
I mean, death. I mean, I don't know if this is my last day here, and if I was to look back and not have been stepped into my dharma and been like, next year I'll do it. I got to really sit down and sell these motorcycles first. Next year I'll get to that client that needs me to help them. Like, there's no tomorrow. Like, it really is just now. And would I be happy with that? And the answer was no. I wouldn't be happy if I'm not expanding. I'm really in my body, not using my time how I want to. So there's an urgency, I think, in me inherently. Death is something that has followed me my whole life. So I think having the different experiences with end of life at a very young age and then incorporating it, it's been pretty loud and clear to me. And so I think whatever somebody's loud and clear is, just dive into that. Trust that, because I don't know if you have tomorrow. And I wish everybody just lives the most of every day that they can.
And so how do you take care of yourself? Because you're working with a lot of energy. Death
I get this question a lot.
Yeah, it can feel heavy. So
it's not true. That's a lie. It's not true.
Okay.
Yeah, people say that. I get that question. I'm like, oh, that must be so. Oh, and I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm more enlivened. I don't know if that's the word. I'm more nourished. I'm more full of energy and magic when I sit in that space. And I think that's like the gift when you kind of slay the dragon of fearing death. You get like this gift of like, no, you're stepping into like a space where you're not really using your energy. You're not, like, if I was sourcing my own energy, it would be very taxing. You're correct. It would be, I don't know how you do it. But because I kind of step into this other plane of existing, I become the battery, so to speak. I'm able to leave that space and take off the death doula mask and put on the mom mask, or put on the girl that just wants to eat ice cream and watch 90 Day Fiancé for the next 3 hours and forget the world. Like, I get to be all of it. And so there's really just a recognition of like, when I'm in that space, I turn into this thing, the battery, and then I not using my power source, and then I get to use my world and my source how I want to. So it enlivens me. I really think maybe there's the well of eternal life on that side.
And I wonder too if it's because you are living in your purpose, you're in alignment, so that feeds the soul even, and that regenerates and revitalizes and creates energy.
Yeah, if you're in the alignment, if you're living in the promise. And my promise is that this here on earth, I've been promised an experience, but I haven't been promised to it being doomed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come here to be doomed. I came here to experience this so that I can go back to wherever that was, and continue my refinement, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spoil it for myself.
So are there situations where there's some kind of feeling for you where you maybe think, oh my gosh, this is out of my comfort zone? I don't know, like something, and how do you work through that?
Yeah. So there's like two parts of me. There's the human side. Like, I'll be sitting in space and in the silence with somebody, I have my eyes closed and I'm seeing them practicing coming out of their body. I see this a lot. It's a very beautiful and sacred thing. And then my mind will go, did you unplug your hairdryer? I'm like, oh, so, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a practice to be in that. I allow my mind to wander and be like, and I just bring it back to my breath, then bring it back to the person, and I start again. And I start again, and I start again. And sometimes it'll happen a few times, depending on where I'm at in my life. And then sometimes it's like, oh, that was a practice to stay really present. And that's okay. I'm human.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too, the importance of taking care of oneself through this.
Yeah. So, when my clients pass away, I purge, I cry, I really allow myself to go to that deep place. I'll usually have a ceremony or ritual with flowers, like a rose ceremony. For each one of my clients, I light a candle, I close out that portal, and depending on when I'm working with their family through the grief, now we start those processes. But yeah, I have my own rituals to close out the energy. It's usually a shower or a bath with salt and I just allow my nervous system to process that as well, because there's a lot of attunement at the end.
Okay, I'm sure you probably get asked this a lot too, but do the energies or, do spirits after they pass, do they follow you? Like, how do you protect your energy, or how do you?
I follow is the wrong word, but they will reveal themselves to me.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm not scared. I work with really strong barriers, really strong boundaries. And I think each person has their own way of activating this. That's why the placebo is such a mystery, right? Like, why does Krishna do it for you, but Christ does it for me? But we still are at this very powerful place of faith, right? And so it's really a unique person. You're unique for each person to activate what turns them on and their authority. And so I work in that realm, and I trust that whatever does come through is for my information and for my highest good. And yeah, I just trust that. And not to say there isn't, maybe you're saying protection from like darkness or but I'm a flashlight. So like, you put me in a dark room, I'm just going to shine. But the darkness can be, can be there because it just makes me shine even brighter.
Right.
And so I'm not afraid of it, nor do I feel I need to protect. The boundaries are more of just like asserting my authority. Yeah. And from that place of authority, then I can kind of navigate these spaces in a way that's not diminishing or depleting.
I love what you're saying. It resonates so much. I think that too. When people talk about like dark energies and this and that, I'm like, we're in a world where there's darkness, like alive, you know? That's where more harm physically can be done. So any darkness on the other side, we're the light. So
yeah,
it's okay either way. You know?
And then I think what is dangerous. So if you were going to go, okay, what is the dangerous part? Your listeners like, oh, she just lives in the foo-foo. It is only dangerous when you don't know the darkness's name. But if I know the darkness's name, oh, this darkness is trying to come in through my shame. Oh, this is trying to come in through my feeling of unworthiness. This is coming through my trauma. No, I know your name. No, I'm not going to believe that. Sorry. And so that's, I think if you don't know its name, then it becomes the thing that becomes the repetitive thoughts and then spirals into other things. But if you know your darkness's name, it's like a puppy.
And that's why it's important to know oneself, because as it comes through these different ways, that's just a reflection of where your areas are that may be more susceptible, right, for some energy to enter through. So if it's coming through the shame, that's just exposing that there's a wound there in regards to shame. And like you said, for things to happen for our highest good or our education, that's a great perspective to have to transition stuff to, so that when it does come, it's like, if this is for my highest good, if this is for education, that this is an opportunity. And what can I do with this information? And rather than push away, then we're more open to receiving whatever it has to offer.
Yeah. And we're more open to the lesson and the growth. And that's where we start to really catch on to something there. The darkness is very stagnant. So it just physically feels uncomfortable too. I just, can't stay there.
Yeah, I love it. Is there anything else that you want to share that maybe I haven't asked?
Gosh, you really hit it all. You hit the soul, you hit the logistics, you hit the plant medicine. How are you doing?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah. I am doing okay today. Yeah. As you're saying that, I feel the emotion. Like there's emotion that lives still. Sadness for my cousin Elaine Reyes, who passed away recently. She was battling stage 4 treatment-resistant cancer, ovarian cancer. So it was a little bit over a year, maybe around a year journey of her knowing that she had it. But she tried. The type of cancer she had was not responding to different types of chemotherapies. And then in time, the tumors just got big, and then they started affecting other organs, which caused the end of this lifetime. So, for me, in our family, we haven't had a lot of loss. So when we did have loss, it was more like grandparents, older family members, or people that I wasn't super close with. So it's felt differently. This hit me hard because she was really close. She was like a younger sister in a sense. But now that I'm doing all of this spiritual work, I went through the experience in a different way because I understood more than, maybe I would have 5 years ago. So I really felt grateful to know and to understand. But my human self still suffers. My human side feels like, what? Like, no, why? But I understand. Like, my soul is like, it's okay. Like, she's still here. You can bring her in whenever you need her. And actually, like, now you have another energy, helpful energy that you can access all the time. Like, she's going to become like a guardian angel or a spirit guide now for me. And I can call on her when I need help. So I feel like I'm more empowered now that she's over there because she has access to this otherness that I'm limited with in some ways. So it's like a readjustment. It's a transition. It's a journey for myself. But what I think is so cool about all of this, and I do feel like she is now bringing all of this into my understanding, my realm of knowing it, or even curiosity, is like, wait, there's all of this that can be so helpful to people. And what is this like? So I became really curious, and I'm so glad I met you through this process. And I want to share with the listeners what I experienced, so that way when they're going through something, they know what's out there. Because I had already heard of end of life doulas and, what that means a little bit, I reached out to somebody. I started looking for referrals. I went online, and so I met you, and we had a conversation, and you were responsive really quickly, which was so helpful because it felt like the end, everything was happening so fast. Like, it went from, oh, she's just in the ER to, because she's dehydrated and she's having digestive issues, she can't eat and things like that. We didn't know that this was like the beginning of the end. We thought it was just another doctor's visit, or, I mean, an ER visit is not a doctor's visit, but you know what I mean. But we just saw things taking a turn for the worst, and we were in denial. I could tell because she is so optimistic and she's a fighter, and she was like, almost like, because of her personality, we thought like she's going to be fine, So I reached out, we talked. The idea was going to be that you were going to support the family, you were going to support her, and see what it is that she needed at that time, whether it was sound healing, whether it was to talk about something, whether it was plant medicine, whatever it was. And she was really excited to do that. She was so open to it all, So she was like, I want this. So we were like, yes. We grew up with religion. We were Catholic when we were younger. Maybe she was Christian at some point. But now we don't have a religion we practice. So for me, seeing her go through this, I felt like there was a spiritual component that was necessary through this part of the journey. So that's why I mentioned this to her. I'm like, what do you think about this? And this is what's out there. She's like, yeah. So that was the plan, but she didn't even make it to meet with you. But even for me and speaking with you, it was so grounding to know that you were there and that this was going to happen. So fast forward, even though we didn't get to have you meet her, it's been about 2 weeks. I mean, time is a little bit weird right now, but I think it's been about 2 weeks, and we knew that there was a need for more. So her friends were reaching out, and I do single day retreats through the Moon Collective Sanctuary, and we do other wellness services and gatherings. So two of the friends were like, can we do something? I still feel sadness and grief in the body, and I feel like I need to release. So I was like, yeah. So I thought about it, and I was like, I can plan this, I can do it, but I need to receive too. Like, I am I'm feeling it too. Like, I know it. So that's why I reached out again. And I was like, I think we need some kind of ceremony for us to be able to not only honor her again, but release and feel whatever it is that we're feeling. So yeah, it was amazing. We had a grief ceremony, a sacred ceremony, and her family, well, our family came and, it was like so beautiful. We did breath work, we did a sound bath, we did a rose ceremony. So all this ritual, I think that's an important piece. Ritual is necessary for healing. And it's these ceremonies that create a ritual that promote this healing. There was so much love in that room yesterday, so many tears, but like it felt like an overflow of love, if that makes sense. It was, there was like pain coming out, but it was like a reminder of the love that we've experienced together with Elaine. And it was just like so rich.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I have to tell you, so you don't know this. The day I talked to you, we spoke an hour before we spoke. I had just heard that one of my clients passed away. So I was on the way to, I was like, I need to go to the store and get flowers. And so I couldn't find like the roses. They were all out. I'm like, okay, but there was just this little potted plant of white little cute flowers. So I was like, okay, well, this one. And so I went to do the ceremony and ritual for the person in between us talking, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't pick these flowers off because they look so good in the pot. And I was like, okay, well, let's bring them and then bring them home, put them on my desk. We talked and I named them Lydia after you. I was like, I don't think she knows this, but I was like, that's such a pretty name. I was like, what do you want to be called? Flowers? It's like Lydia. I'm like, okay.
I love it. Oh my God, maybe those flowers represent some kind of growth or something. Because now
I want to bring them to you.
Oh my God.
I want to bring them to you. It was the day that we spoke, and it was before she had transition, and it was our initial meeting, and they've just sat there and I'll take them to the sun. I'm like, okay, Lydia, how much sun do you want? She's very sassy. So,
oh my God, yes. I'm sure high maintenance too.
Yeah, a little high. I mean, she's good. She doesn't need much, but she wants it all.
Yes, same. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, I'll bring it to you.
Yeah.
So,
So all of this has led us to this moment, and I am so grateful. I feel like this is really opening up something new. I have, since I was young, I used to be visited by what I would call ghosts back then. I feel like I have my feet in both worlds, so to speak. And this is really calling me too, to be I need to learn more about this. I need to be in touch with this part of the field. And so you and I'm sure, will be working together in some capacity.
Crossing paths.
And maybe bring some offerings into the Moon Collective Sanctuary
I would love that.
People that need this as well. So
yes.
I'm excited to see how this evolves.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's an honor.
Thank you. So for those that are listening and want to connect with you, what are some ways that people can reach you?
You connect with me through my website. It's Connect, Anamkara, N as in Nancy, M as in Mary, CARA.com. Or you can message me through Instagram. I'm pretty active on there, Mary _Telliano, TELLIANO. And message me there. I'm more than happy to reach out and connect with you.
Yeah. Okay. Not to put you on the spot, but I feel like you have a message to give to the audience. So what can you leave everybody with?
Death is for the living. Death is for the living. Death is here to create this space within us for more capacity. It's always more on the other side of grief. There's always more on the other side of loss. And I just encourage everybody to stay in the ashes long enough to find their own diamond.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank the listeners, the audience, for tuning in. And until next time, thank you. Thank you for joining me on the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Remember, your journey to a more fulfilling and empowered life continues beyond this episode. Until next time, may you remember who you are and stay open to embrace all that life has to offer. Ready to dive deeper into your journey of self-discovery? Join us for a transformative retreat at the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Visit mooncollectivesanctuary.com to learn more and book your spot.